Good evening and welcome to Olde Tyme Taunton. I am your host, Charles Crowley, and tonight, like we do every week, we talk about our community and hopefully generate a greater amount of interest and enthusiasm in our city and hopefully a greater appreciation. That is our goal here. The one rule I'm sure you all know by now is no politics. If you want to talk about politics or current events, tune in on Monday night for Bob Jacobs. He's coming up with his 500th show next week, so it is going to be a wonderful time to celebrate a very significant milestone in local cable television. We're here live from our studio here on Main Street in Taunton. It's April of 2009. It's a new show, so you can call in tonight. I know I've had a series of tape shows recently, but please feel free to call in. We're going to do a show on Whittenton Village tonight. So if you want to, you can tell us about your growing up in Whittenton. We're going to take a little stroll through. We got 150, 170 photographs, something like that, about Whittenton. Some scenes you haven't seen before, some obviously you have. But what I want to do is explain to you, you heard the name Whittenton, and where did it get its name? So if you look at the first slide, you've seen this postcard quite a while, if we go to the first one. But then Whittenton actually came, this is a map of Staffordshire, England. And you'll notice right there, Whittington. And that is where the Leonard family had their family forge, the Whittington Forge. And that is where when the Leonard family built their forge in what was the original part of Taunton here, it was what is now Rainham. So when they built their second iron forge over near on the Mill River, they named it after the former family establishment in England. And that's how it got its name. And so any of the actual roads led to this mill. Right where the red building is, that's the corner of Warren Street. You can see that down right there. You have Whittenton Street, then that's Cabbage Hill, and then Whittenton Manufacturing Company. Where that red block is, that's where the Whittenton, the Leonards had the forge. So the actual road that goes up and to the left, that's the Whittenton Street that goes by the old pepper pot over towards the lake, and that was the haul road to get the iron ore that was in where Sebastian Lake is today to get to the actual forge. So just to give it, see, that's the area, and many of those houses where that arrow is actually are the homes of the Leonard family that ran that mill. So just so you give you an idea, that's where that circle, that's where the movie Ashcliff was filmed out back. So we'll show a little bit after that. But many times when people are talking about Whittenton, that's the area they're talking about. It's actually Britanniaville section. The original part of Whittenton Village was over where we showed you Warrington and Whittenton Street. Then the area where the Three Corners, which we'll see a little bit later, near the Whittenton House of Pizza, is sometimes referred to as Three Corners. But this is the Whittenton Four Corners, or Britanniaville. You can see the Polish Club, or what would later become the Polish Club in this picture. The area to the right is where the old Whittenton Hardware used to be, Manny's News, or McGovern's and so forth in that area. But the old trolley tracks. This picture will be taken in front of the police station, Bay Street Fire Station, looking down Bay Street towards the Four Corners. Anyone going to school in the Whittenton area went to the Britanniaville School. And that is the area that is across the street from the front entrance of Reed and Barton. That's what was the original schoolhouse in the Britanniaville area. And then it would later become Mechanics Hall, and this is where Abraham Lincoln actually spoke when he came to Taunton. One of the places he spoke here. And this building was moved over to the grounds of Reed and Barton and used as a work shed, and then the parking lots there. And then that's what they went from that school, when that building was a school, into the newer Bay Street School. And this was right on Bay Street, in between Madison and Monroe Street. And it was a small two-story building, and then they added on to the front of it. And this would have been used up until the time of the Hopewell School. But that was very, very overcrowded with all the immigrants coming to the Whittenton area. That is where it just became so overcrowded. And then they had to build another school in the area. But that was all built of wood, as you can see. And of course, the Hopewell School, and that is a Monroe Street. And that particular school, Tom Quigley does a good job as the principal currently of this school. And a lot of people wonder where you get the name of Hopewell. There's a number of theories, quotes by famous, not so famous people, let us hope well. But actually, if you look at the group of ships that brought some of the early immigrants to this country, there was a series of ships called the Speedwell. For example, the Speedwell was the ship that Elizabeth Pole came here on, and the sister ship to that was called the Hopewell. So it is my belief that that's where the name Hopewell came, because of many of the people who settled in the particular area. I think that my theory is that's where that particular name come from. But the Whittenton, what we know now as Whittenton, actually was known by several smaller neighborhood identifiable names, like Hopewell is that area when you're going up Bay Street near Holy Rosary Church, and of course Doherty's Market, right near Jefferson Street. It's no longer there, but it used to be a little green building on the left, almost opposite Jefferson Street on Bay Street, just before you get to North Street. But there was also a Doherty's Market, as many of you remember, up. Actually, there was several of them, but one was more recently up on Washington Street. But that was right in the neighborhood called Hopewell. But you had the Britanniaville, you had the Three Corners, or New Village, as they call it, Thomas Russell Square. You had New Brighton. New Brighton was a part of Whittenton, just above Andy's Market, where the Lafayette Club is. And you had, of course, North Taunton was way up near Camp Miles Standish and so forth, so just to identify the area. But this is the Hopewell Mill, or the remnants of the Hopewell Mill, and this was located on the river, on the Mill River, right where, next to where After Hours Auto Body is. If you were to go down Albro Avenue would run right into this mill. This was a textile mill. Samuel Crocker, Charles Richmond, Thomas Bush, some of those families actually ran this particular mill. There was a series of mills in the area. One was actually the Taunton Manufacturing Company actually created a series of dams that were put on the Mill River, so that you'd be able to provide the water power necessary to support some of these mills. But it was a source of employment for a number of families in the area. But if you look at all the mills, this area here, you see all these numbers, that's a map. It was called the Mill River, but those are just some of the mills that were on the river near the area. So you can see Taunton State Hospital in the center. That mill would be just where you see the number 10, that's pointing at this particular mill, the Hopewell Mill area. And but Charles Albro used to be the general manager of this particular Hopewell Mill. That's why Albro Avenue has its name. His home used to be right where the Polish Club is. He had a beautiful mansion that was there up until the time, late 1890s, when they took down the old mansion and put up the series of commercial blocks that were there. But that's the Hopewell Mill looking from the Taunton State Hospital side, looking back downriver towards the Hopewell Mill, just to give you an idea. Perhaps you live in the Whittenton area. We're here live April of 2009. We're talking about the neighborhood of Whittenton, or what we know now as Whittenton. If you have a question or comment, give me a call here, 508-824-5638. That's what you can get on board. This is all volunteer. I'm staying out of politics tonight, so don't ask me any political questions tonight. I finally have an hour where I don't have to talk about politics. But there's plenty of time outside of that. So no pothole questions tonight. Anything dealing with Taunton history, if you want a question or a comment, give me a call. Here at 508-824-5638. The picture that we're going to show you, again, is just the Hopewell Mill in that neighborhood, all in that area. It was Hopewell Mill, a source of employment. That's the dam as it is now, that sometimes referred to as the Taunton State Hospital Dam, but it's really the Hopewell Mill Dam, the remnants of that. And the after-hours auto body would be just above this to the right. So just in between where after-hours auto's body is and where the softball fields are, Hopewell Park. That's Albro Avenue. If you look up Albro Avenue, you see these houses. They're all mill houses owned by the company, the factory. And these little houses that you see, these little what appears to be Cape Cod houses, they're actually mill houses. Those are duplexes. As long as you worked in the mill for a modest rent, you would pay and you could stay in these particular houses as they become available. And there are several. If you're on Bay Street, in between, say, Albro Avenue and, say, North Avenue, there's some big two-story houses. Those were actually owned by the mill as well. Those were four-family mill houses belonging to the Hopewell Mill. But the biggest thing called Hopewell now, other than the street, is Hopewell Park. So this shows you the back. This would be probably in the 40s, 30s and 40s of Hopewell Park. Looking from the woods, you had the building that was there in the center, just in the front of the main gate. Over to the right, you can see the remnants of the old grandstand that was there. You can see it here. And they were gathered because the Red Sox played there in the 40s. They also used to have training camps there for say the Brooklyn Dodgers used to have a tryout here at this particular park in town. You'd have many special events. They have lights there now, but originally they didn't have lights. But they occasionally put up portable lights, like the King and his Court. Eddie Faina would come here. They put up portable lights and draw a big crowd. And this is what it looked like. All that's been taken down, but you can see it draw a big crowd. But this particular section, if you look at this is where the ball field was. Originally, when Hopewell Park back, when it was originally designed around World War I, the football field used to be on this side, running from the road to the woods. Whereas when this picture was taken, the football field had moved over to near the pool and near the playground. But originally, the football field was on this side. And as you can see, the old track that's there. And those are not famous. I thought it originally was going to be Walter Alston, but it's not. These are the Brooklyn Dodgers, some of the minor league coaches that were, this picture was taken at Hopewell Park. But I'm sure there were some famous people that went through there. Maybe you remember that. But they used to have the Twilight League. This is Howie Morse, very popular player in the Twilight League. He demonstrated his great power in some of the games they had. You'd have just an abundance of local teams. And perhaps you remember going there, Hopewell Park in Taunton. We're going to take a little stroll up through the neighborhood and go up through Whittenton. If you want to give us a call, 508-824-5638. We're live here from our studio on Main Street, the TCAM studios, where the old Good House used to be. If you want to give me a call, feel free to do that. On any question. We're talking about Whittenton tonight, but if there's something always bugged you about Taunton history, give me a call. I'll try to answer it if I can. It's all volunteer. I've been doing this since July of 1998, about 6 months after Bob Jacobs came on, but he goes right straight through the summers, and he's about to celebrate his 500th show, and I'm falling a little bit short of that. So, we have a call. You're next in Old Tyme Taunton. Hi.
How you doing?
Good. What can we do for you?
Just called to tell that the audio is horrible.
The audio is horrible. All right,
Yep.
let me try to work that out. Can you hear it better now? Can you hear it better now? Can you hear me now? How's
A
that?
little bit better.
All right.
It's horrible. It's like muffled.
Okay. Here, right in the back of where the old Goodnows used to be. But the picture that I'm showing you right now is I'm going to show you very shortly, since we switch to it. It's Sharkey's Carriage Repository, and that is right on Bay Street, just up as near Holy Rosary Church, just to give you an idea. And that is across the street there. This is one of the, actually, it's as I'm told, it's scheduled to close in the near future, but this was established in about 1909, and this was the last of the Catholic churches or parishes to be created. The first, obviously, being St. Mary's, but they have had a proud tradition of the picnics that used to be up on Cabbage Hill, just beyond where Trombley's Movers used to be. That was the picnic grounds. And then, of course, in recent years, they've had the Polish picnic right behind the church with the pavilion they have there and the parish center. It's always drew people from all over the region. If you go up on Broadway, Roseland, this is the second Roseland. This isn't or actually now, the Matrix and a number of other things, Hong Kong City, actually. But originally, the Roseland that was here actually opened in May of 1924. And they had the A.H. Messenger was the band on opening night here. And the it got its name, Roseland, from the rose petals and the decor inside. There have been newspaper reports suggesting that it was because the name of one of the owners was Rose, but actually she didn't own it, I don't believe originally, that actually it had its name earlier when it's originally opened. This burned down in later years, but however, there was some many famous people at the original Roseland. This is right after it was built. This is a Emmett Calvey photograph. But as you can see, that's when it opened. A.H. Messenger was the conductor, formerly with the St. Louis Symphony Orchestra. $1.10 for tickets to get in there, and the wax tax, as they call it. But you'd have not only Sugar Ray Robinson, Count Basie, famous people coming here to Roseland, but Benny Goodman, he performed there at Roseland in 1938, 1942. Tommy Dorsey and his band performed there in 1939. Woody Herman, he was more of a jazz musician or leader at the time. This young fella, I'm sure you've heard of him, Frank Sinatra, performed at Roseland Ballroom, and actually he stayed there at Roseland Ballroom. He was just a young kid at the time, but rather than stay at the local hotel, he stayed there. And many people remember him out playing ball out in the yard during the day before he would perform at night. Louis Armstrong played at Roseland Ballroom. So you can see that was quite a place in its time, but it burned down in 1947. And of course, there's some of the pictures of it just before it was destroyed. But if you have a question or comment, maybe you remember going to Roseland and going to maybe the fights that used to be there. They used to have a lot of fights there. I know my brother Jim Crowley, sometimes referred to as Crow. He fought there many years ago. I attended that fight. Somebody bet him that relative to being able to fill a place, and he said if he fought there, he could fill a place, and they called him on it. And he did fight there, and it packed the house. So it was quite an event, many years ago. But some of the things in the area, I'm sure many of you might not remember, but if you do, please let me know. Horton Sawmill. And you probably wonder where this is, but this would be if you were standing on the back of the parking lot of the root beer stand and looking down Britannia Street. The Britannia Street is over to the right, looking down towards the Polish Club. And that's right on the left where Pierce Ave. That's where Horton Sawmill used to be. So if you have, there's a lot of things in Whittenton that I know about, never seen a picture, like the original root beer stand, or for example, there used to be a building right here. Now, there was an older root beer stand that's over to the left, that little building where they sell the flowers. But originally, I'm told it was a building here that resembled the containers that Chinese food would come in. That was the general shape of it, that they used to sell ice cream out of, right here at Gordon Short Square. But this was Henry's root beer stand for many, many years. You know, all Styles Fish Market, those are another places that people talk about, never seen a photograph of. This is the area where the drugstore is at the corner of Bay Street and, Broadway, and Britannia Street. That's the Sicconi gas station. You know where Blockbuster is today? They put a big shopping plaza in there for Stop and Shop. But this, then of course they had Powers Pontiac. This is an older view of that, Powers Pontiac. The road to the right is where you go down to the landfill. Then they put a plaza up there where the CETA offices were in later years, and now where Italian restaurant and Bella Roma and Blockbuster and so forth is. But of course the old landfill, now it's a big hill, but you used to have to drive down the hill. This was in the I believe this is in the late 70s, early 80s when you went down. You'd have to pick up some equipment down here in at the DPW garage. That's no longer there. Of course, if you went up Broadway, the Edward and Romeo Poria, the Midget Twins service station. And that was a big treat for everybody to go up there. They'd have to get a little step ladder to be able to service your automobile. Perhaps you remember some of these landmarks that we're showing here tonight. Please give us a call here, 508-824-5638. Hopefully you can hear me now. If we've improved the sound here. We're going to take a little stroll through Whittenton. But any of you who've lived in Whittenton, maybe you have some famous stories that you'd like to tell, or maybe there's a question or a comment. You always wondered what used to be here. Maybe you can ask that question. Maybe I know it. If not, somebody watching obviously might know and answer the question that's been bugging you for quite a while. You're next in Old Time Taunton.
Yes, hi, Charlie.
Hi.
I have a small little story to tell you about Whittenton.
Great.
When I was a kid, my mother and I were walking up Bay Street toward the Polish Club, let's say. Mm-hmm. I was on a bike, and as I say, I was weaving in and out of traffic, and she was all nervous, saying I'm going to get hit. Mm-hmm. To make a long story short, I came to a stop by whacking into the corner of the hardware store.
Okay.
I laid in that window for an hour or so. I thought I died.
Huh.
I just knocked the wind completely out of me.
So you're the one who did that, huh? Everybody's been wondering.
It hurt.
Sure.
But the other places that I used to go to was Manny's News.
Yeah.
And the Read and Trade store, Anton's Read.
Yeah, Anton's, yeah.
That's when I was collecting comic books and stuff. I used to find a lot of them down that way.
Sure. Yeah, I have a picture of that. I'll be showing that a little later on. We'll be getting that, okay?
All righty.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye. Maybe somebody else can share one of their stories of growing up in Whittenton. What were the famous places that you would go to? If you ever driven up East Britannia Street, you probably look on the left, you see the gun club, and then look across the street and see all these little metal landmarks here. That's the paupers' graves, and that's on the right as you're going up just beyond the Mayflower Hill Cemetery and before you get to the St. Joseph Cemetery. And that's where a lot of the poor people in the city were buried. And then if you came down and if you're over at the corner of Jackson Street, and this is the area where Acme Motors was at the time this was taken in the 1950s. And this is, and now they're going to put, I think, they were going to put Cumberland Farms there. Recently, in recent years, there was a plan for that. Here they are. Look at that. Some of these automobiles fit. This would be in the late 50s, I believe, because I believe those are at least 1950. Well, there's some 1949, 1950 cars. There's some 1956 cars in this picture. This is the center of Whittenton or Britanniaville. You got the corner, Bay Street here. The old, what was later become the Polish Club. Records is right there. You can see the old drugstore. The building over to the right, that's where the parking lot is now. And then as you're looking at the snow scenes, look at that, pulling the horses. But this didn't, the Polish Club wasn't here until about 1956, I believe. But because that was over, the Polish Club used to be over here at 7 Lawrence Street. And then that's when they moved over to here, because this used to be Champney's Bar, and Leish's used to be in here before they built that building. You can see over to the left there, but Leish's used to be in this particular establishment. But you see Champney's Cafe was right there at the corner, what we know now as the Polish Club. And all the people are gathered for the Reed and Barton parade in the 40s. And you get to see Ballantine Ale. That's right right in the corner, Britanniaville. That's inside. Maybe you can see some of your relatives inside, the old Champney's Bar. This is when it was Leish's. I had some people tell me, oh, it was never Leish's. But they were here before they moved to that new building, or the current building that's behind this later. But that's this picture was taken probably in the 1980s. All this area that you see there was, with the exception of the Polish Club, was all burned down in a fire, probably early 80s or mid 80s, somewhere around there, I believe. Manny's News, someone talked about that. Maybe you have a popular place that you went to, and just give us a call here, 508-824-5638. Maybe just somebody else. They'd talk about some of the places they would go as a kid. Maybe there were some popular characters from Whittenton you'd like to talk about. You know, famous people that you'd always run into, always say hello. But I'm sure there's a lot of stories. After that fire that we just mentioned, where Manny's News used to be, was the newer plaza that we have here, and that was put up. Bertha Bolster was a big figure in the Polish Club at the time this plaza was built. You're next in Old Tyme Taunton. Hi.
Hi. I thought this would amuse you, because I'm probably your oldest audience. But many years ago, my father, Jack Shea, was the police officer at Roseland. Okay. And let me tell you, my grandchildren are very impressed when I tell them that I knew Frank Sinatra, Benny Goodman, Guy Lombardo. But of course, my father was a police officer, and all my friends just loved to go there, but they didn't have the money. So if you knew Mr. Shea and you knew the right door to go to, you really enjoyed your night at Roseland. Well, my very best friend was Rosie. Uh-huh. She lived way up in the top of Roseland, right. And I was just a youngster, maybe a teenager, and you can't imagine what a wonderful experience that was to have my friends meet Frank Sinatra, Benny Goodman, Guy Lombardo, and on. And I tell my grandchildren that now. And that was because of weekends. My father was the police officer there. Now, that was really quite a memory that I want to share with you.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. I'm sure that's quite a proud moment.
Yes, and many people, including the late Mayor Stroney. The last time he saw me, he said he didn't have the price to get into Roseland, but if you knew Jack Shea...
he got in there too?
You were all set.
Great.
And I wanted to share that with you.
Thank you very much.
I enjoy your show.
Thank you. All right. Well, that was good. Maybe you snuck in there too. But if you look at all that area where we just showed you, this is the newer plaza. But if you looked at the old plaza, that same area, This is what it looked like. Some of the old stores across the street. You had this was the 50s, the old fire station. Some of the old wagons. This is a real old picture here. The station would be to the left. And that's where Sammy Turin had his washing shop years ago. The pizza place back. Picture was taken around 1980. That would be that view now. Of course, you get the parking lot there where that yellow car is. There used to be the building there. It was Atlantic and Pacific store at that time. That's the store right in the corner. It's now a parking lot. This was taken probably in the 40s, I believe. That hasn't really changed that much. The Bay Street station. This was designed by Abner Coleman. Let me see. This one would have been. Let me see. This would be the second one. So this had been built around 1888, 89, because what they did is they built a school in Whittenton first, and then the Ware Grammar School, and then they just flipped them when they built the fire stations. But this one, an old picture that I had found at a flea market many, many years ago in the 70s. But I looked at it real close, and I noticed that it said the Lovering Hose Company right above the doors in the back. And then you look at the hats, you can see Whittenton or Lovering Hose Company on them. So what I do is if you blow it up, you can see right in the center of this big circular thing there, it says Lovering. And that is the Lovering family ran the mills in Whittenton. So they built the original station. The Lovering Hose Company was located where, let me see, the Anton's Book used to be, over where the liquor store is today in Whittenton Hardware. That's where they were located, across the street from the current fire station. See? You can zoom right in. I'm going to do it again. See that thing? You move it, then you move it. You can see Lovering. That's Lovering. That was the Whittenton station. It's right there with Bay Street. This picture was taken around the 80s. The old Anton's Bookstore, Bay Street Liquor. All this is all gone now. But that's where the gentleman who called earlier talked about getting the comic books and the used books, things like that. It used to be a direct importing company at one time. The St. John's Episcopal Church here, landmark, probably 150 years ago that was there. So it hasn't changed much. Beautiful, beautiful inside. This picture would have been priceless if only the person taking the picture would turn to a little bit to the left, because that little girl you see over to the left is probably standing in front of the Stiles Fish Market. And I have yet to find a picture of Stiles Fish Market. So any of you out there watching tonight, if you know anybody who has a picture of Stiles Fish Market, let me know, because we'd love to be able to show that. So many people told me about that. 508-824-5638. We're taking a little stroll through Whittenton. We got a load of pictures to go tonight. We'll try to get to them all. Some old favorites as well as some new ones. Of course, the old with Kylie's, that's the block there. And then, of course, you got the Whittenton Hardware Store. Whittenton Pharmacy and Goldstein's. The Grand Theater used to be there, right across from Immaculate Conception Church. And of course the marquee, sometimes referred to as the Whittenton Theater originally, and the $1 Million Mystery. But you can see that's what it looked like inside the old theater. It later changed. It burned down 1966, 67, I believe. But there was another Doherty's Market, as you can see on the left. This would be right across from the Immaculate Conception Church, looking down towards the building in the rear on the right. That is where the Whittenton House of Pizza. Now look at it closely, because you're going to see part of it still standing a little bit later on. But you can see that's the old Immaculate Conception Church. When this was being built, the parish was originally called the Parish of St. James. But when they actually opened the church, it was changed to Immaculate Conception. And then they eventually, when they made St. Jake's, that's where that name was continued. But that's just before it was taken down. That was right where the Immaculate Conception Church is today, it's closed now. And then, of course, they built this in around 54 on the site of that church. And that's, I believe, the final ceremony for the Immaculate Conception Church. And behind the old Immaculate Conception School, that's no longer there, that's in the back parking lot. The A&P moved around quite a bit, but this, you might remember it as Goldstein's now. And you get, I always tell everybody, if they don't have it at Goldstein's, they don't make it. Yeah, they got quite a reputation there. But that little parking lot over to the right of Goldstein's, they used to have a gas station there, and that building to the right, it's on fire, that would be right where the Gavush apartments are, across from St. Jake's. But remember that picture I showed you earlier? That's a close-up of it, right where Whittenton House of Pizza is. But if you look at it now, that's that part. See, I'll show you. See that? If you take that little top part off, that's the building. Still there, Lovering Hall, as they call it. The Lovering family, they built a lot of structures in town for people, groups to have meetings. They were very, very wealthy. Very, very, very generous. They built fire stations. They contributed to the water system, public transportation. They gave back to the community a great, great deal. But People's Drug, that's what the Whittenton House of Pizza building was the site of at one time. Powers Drug at one time as well. And you're probably looking at that building. You've seen that many times, but that's where Goldstein's originally started. That's when Levi Goldstein had his little store, and eventually they moved across where they are today. But it was also where Milo's television service was in that same building. Spick and Span Bakery was there. Perhaps you remember some of these places. 508-824-5638. That's all it takes to jump on board here. That's St. John the Baptist Hall, or St. Jean. Sometimes they would refer it, but it was French for St. John. This was actually a Roland's furniture store at one time, and it became apartments. If you go up Whittenton Street, one of the oldest businesses in town, Beauvais Bike Shop, family business, one of, if not the oldest, family-run businesses in the city. And they actually started, that's an older picture of it, but they actually started over on Broadway, right at the, I believe, Broadway and Whittenton Street, right in that area. That's one of the original pictures, the oldest picture that I have of that. Another old businesses was where Blinks used to be. That's where, for many, many years, probably early part of the century, probably 100 years ago, it was one of the oldest bar rooms in town, with Chet Martin, and the Martin family ran for many, many years. This is Benjamin's, but one of the more famous restaurants in town. But originally, that was the Ward 8 Club. And that's, I should say originally, but actually it was the home of Arthur Poole, who ran the Poole Silver Company, who was the mayor of the city of Taunton in the late 1930s. But this would become the Ward 8 Club, and then, of course, it would later, by the Benjamin family, would evolve into Benjamin's Restaurant. But back where Gavush Apartments across from St. Jake's, you'd have the old Whittenton School, Whittenton Grammar School, the largest school in the Whittenton area. This was built the year before the Ware Grammar School. This was built in 1869. It was designed by Hartwell and Swayze of Boston. Abram Briggs was the contractor, or the mason, I should say. This had 4 rooms on each of the first floors, and then the top floor had 2 large, what they call recitation rooms, that were converted into classrooms very shortly after it was built. And of course, this closed in the 50s. But I'm not sure if it burned down or not. I believe it did, but it was it stood there vacant for a few years. Right across the street from it was the St. Jake's Church. For many years, it was occupied the basement. They'd only build a basement, and they had the masses there for decades in the actual basement of the building. And it wasn't until the 50s that they built the upper structure, very similar to St. Anthony's. The story of St. Anthony's was the same way. They had their own parochial school, but now this is as an apartment. But of course, this is the St. Jake's School when it was in operation, right behind the St. Jake's Church. It now, it's not known as St. Jake's any longer. But some of the little wagons up in the Whittenton area, you can get some ice, the ice wagon. This would be located near the area of Lawrence Street and Cottage Street. It would usually be parked, so I'm told. As you can see, this would be on Whittenton Street, near Cottage, I believe it is, in that general area. The old Whittenton Village Railroad Station. This is one of 2 railroad stations in the Whittenton neighborhood. And this would be on Whittenton Street, almost directly opposite Cottage Street. So if you come up Cottage Street to Whittenton, look straight ahead, that's where it was. As you can see, all the people are gathered there. The other station in Whittenton was the Whittenton Junction Station, which was over on West Britannia Street. And this is looking north, so that train is coming from Camp Miles Standish area down towards the center of the city. That switching tower that you see there in the center, that was there for many, many years, up until the 60s, because I remember seeing it myself. Maybe you saw it. See that? Look at that. Maybe you remember seeing that some time ago. Right, this is West Britannia Street, as you're heading towards Fremont Street. That's the Whittenton Manufacturing Company, sometimes Alden Auto Parts, Swanks, over the years. That's where the Ashcliffe movie was just recently filmed. That's the Lovering family. Actually, this was a factory here even before the Loverings had it. J.K. Mills and Company actually owned the property because actually they owned the note, because they were the financing firm. It was Samuel Crocker, Charles Richmond, Thomas Bush were among the people that were the principals of the Taunton Manufacturing Company. Then the Willard Lovering worked for him and eventually took over the company. And his 3 sons are the ones listed there below. So Henry and Charles, they were also involved in bringing the public transportation, bringing the water system to the city. They were very, very important, not only as a source of employment for people in the city, but they brought improvements to the city as a whole. But that's you can get these postcards almost anywhere. That's what it looked like, the textile mills. You could work 6 days a week, 10, 12 hours a day. That's what it looked, the garment factory. A source of employment for people come all over the world, come to Taunton for economic opportunity. As you can see, that's Salome Lincoln, and she was a worker in the mills in 1829. She protested, or led a protest of all the female workers who were disgusted with the fact that a man doing the same job would get paid more money than a woman. So she led a procession of women who paraded down Bay Street all the way to Taunton Green and protested. One of the earliest public displays for women's rights in the country was here before Susan B. Anthony and everything else. But she was fired. But hey, that was the days. But that's the old factory building, still there, and that's the the dam that in 2005 that made Bob Nunes famous. That's the dam that was being repaired in 1958, and this is a picture of the dam that was taken down in 2005, the Whittenton Dam, and you can see that's what was left, the rocks that were left. But also the site for Ashcliffe, the movie. It should be coming out this October. These were part of the movie set. There's also another movie that's coming to Taunton. They're at least discussing filming it here, starring Adam Sandler and Kevin James, a movie called Zookeeper. So Hollywood is still interested in Taunton, so keep your eyes open. This is the quarry. It shows you quite an operation there. But right where the quarry is was where Castle Rock. You see the kids up on top. A popular tourist attraction. Even postcards used to picture of this big rock. Native Americans allegedly would come here and ponder decisions and so forth here. It was quite a prominent landmark. All in that area on Whittenton Street, Trombley Movers. This is the intersection of Whittenton and Warren Street. They used to have Whittenton Car Barn used to be there. These are all the trolley barns for the on Whittenton Street for the street railway yard, all right at that intersection. As you turn and go down Warren Street, that's the Leonard houses that were there, James Leonard. This is the Lovering homestead, right near where the Hall Road, what was the old railroad tracks that were there, the Loverings that ran the mills, the Leonard School. This opened on January 28th, 1889. It is closed right now, but that's what it looked like. That's the name for the Leonard family who ran the iron business in the Whittenton area. Also on what they call Christian Hill is the Union Congregational Church. And this is right opposite Chester Street. But there's a series of hills that run through the city. Christian Hill is one of them, obviously Prospect Hill, up at the north end of the city, and of course Mount Leonard on Taunton State Hospital grounds, Toad Hill where Cohannett School is, Mount Pleasant down where the cemetery is, and Doyle's Hill down where McCabe Sand and Gravel. Reed and Barton, the granddaddy of all businesses in town. As you can see, this is the actual, from the river, the dam there. This was taken in 1886. That's the original building for the main entrance, or the main building for Reed and Barton. Henry Reed and Charles Barton, those are the people Isaac Babbitt started the business, but these guys worked for him and eventually took it over and built it into the world-renowned area. But this is if you're coming down Britannia Street, the Britannia Street would go to the right, and Danforth Street would be straight ahead. You can see the main entrance, the main building for what is now Reed and Barton, isn't there. That building's not even there. See that? So this is a newer building, but that's now the main entrance. The older entrance was on Britannia Street. As you can see the layout, you can see all the mill houses that were there on the lower right, opposite the parking lot. I believe they took away at least two of them. That's one of the old famous postcards of Reed and Barton. It's how the old-fashioned truck, Reed and Barton's old-fashioned truck. I'm just scurrying through some of these pictures. I get so many of them, but I've got about 10 minutes left, so I want to make sure that I get them all in. That's the flood of 1886. As you can see, all the parking lots just loaded. That's what it looked like inside. All the items, they were handcrafted, as you can see. Over the years, they'd make some just extraordinary products here at the world-renowned Reed and Barton. Of course, some good customers too, like President Kennedy. They got a Reed and Barton punch bowl set. This is because I believe that's the America's Cup, I believe. And of course, the Olympic medals for Atlanta Olympics in 1996 were made at Reed and Barton in Taunton. That's the officials, military officials with Reed and Barton officials getting the Army Navy Award, and all the workers marching over to Roseland for the official presentation. There you can see up in the north end, this is Maury's Bridge. That's the Bay Street there in that little building. It received repairs over the years. It was about 200 years old, or parts of it were, I should say. So you can see some of the beams. But it's no longer there. It's been taken down. It's gone by the way of history. And as you can see, the water levels would get high, and that's the fire department checking the water levels. That's taken, I think, in 2005. But you always wonder what it looked like inside. That's what it looked like. This is the actual, these little boards you see on the floor. You pick them up and look down into the river. And that's the old, the gates that would go down to actually dam up the river at the dam. It just was so old they couldn't hold back the water any longer. But Sebacia Lake, that was quite, of course, his ice house along there. It was quite, imagine Watson's Lake Ice Company. It's amazing. They have Watson Lake. The Sebacia, though, was man-made. It was originally called Scatting Pond, and then eventually Sebacia Lake once the trolley car was put in. This is Commix quarter deck, Barry Ameral's place for many, many years, but that's when it was Commix, looking out on the water, looking back towards the establishment, towards Scatting Street. Now it's a family residence. And the old gondola, many years, the Rivas ran this for many, many years. Originally, it used to be a German, the original gondola was actually the German club, but Executive Order 9095 in 1942, Franklin D. Roosevelt, the Office of Alien Property Custodian, they confiscated all German property, and then the Ray and Hugo Riva they get out of they were in the Air Force. They started the Air Force Club here, and eventually the family moved their family restaurant from Whale Street in their family house up here, the Rivas did, to the gondola. It's Mario and Rosa Riva, 1946, in the original gondola. This is Ray Riva. There he is, and of course Hugo. And now, of course, it's the home plate. But this whole area up in Whittenton has been quite a popular spot, even when ABC comes to Taunton. This is the Super Nanny in Taunton just in March, coming here, and that was when they were filming it. It actually showed or aired last week. The DeMello family was depicted here. They signed up, and you could see all the cameras and lights and everything else. Crews filming the Super Nanny walking into the house over and over again. So I got a chance to meet with her here, and we actually went up there with Kim here at Kim Matthews here at the TCAM Studios, with her assistant Zach joined us. I invited them to join with me as we went up and met Joe Frost, the Super Nanny, up at the that's her getting out of her little cab and walking into the DeMello family, and it was quite a treat to see the DeMello family being depicted on national TV in Taunton. So perhaps you have a question or comment about anything dealing with Taunton. We got a few minutes left. I know I sped through that just in case, but there's so many scenes that in Taunton. There's so much to be proud of in the city, no matter what it is about it. The more you know about Taunton, the more you love it. And I'm going to take this call. Maybe they have a story to be that they can relate to us. You're next in Old Time Taunton.
Yeah, hi, Charlie.
Hi.
Hey, I'd like to go back to the Goldstein part, the store up there on Whittenton Street.
Sure, okay.
Bay Street, I mean.
Yeah.
Hey, my question is, there at Goldstein's, there's a small roadway.
Yeah.
That building to the left, if you're looking at it, it goes up to the parking lot. It's got a dancing school in it, a carpet place.
Okay.
And now it's apartments up on the top. What was that building before?
Would you, when we're looking at it right here, I'm going to show you the picture. See if we can show it. That's the original Goldstein, where Goldstein's is.
See that building on the left?
Yes.
That's what I was wondering what that was before. I thought it was some kind of factory maybe at one time.
I'm not anything out of the ordinary. I can't think right off the top of my head. There used to be a gas works, used to be up behind, way up behind it. It was there for many, many years. A big, huge tank that was there, similar to what they had down the Ware.
Yeah.
But not. I don't recall exactly what was in that building. Maybe somebody watching might remember.
Yeah. Well, my cousin lives in there, and I noticed that in one part of the building, it's like a big old fire door. Big 2-inch thick door, all metal. So that's why I kind of figured it might have been a factory-type system at one time, maybe.
Yeah, well, tell you what, let me check that out, and then maybe in a future show I'll reveal that, okay?
Yeah, okay, Charlie.
Great,
Have a good night, Charlie.
You too, thank you. Perhaps you have a question or a comment about the Whittenton area or anything dealing with Taunton. We've got about 5 minutes left here. There's so many little tidbits about the city. I know I just did a program for the Literacy Club the other day, and we did on the rivers of Taunton, and we had a good crowd there, and a lot of people are interested in all the stories and the mills and things that went on in the rivers. We have a call. You're next in Old Time Taunton. Hi.
Yeah, Charlie.
Hi, you're on the air.
Yeah. Well, he was just talking about Whittenton. That used to be the old drugstore, the old Walsh's drugstore.
Okay. All right. Let me see if I can show you back. I'll go back a little bit, see if I can show a picture out from the side. Because, yeah, that was, whoops, oops. I'll go back some of the early pictures. Maybe we can see that, because I do have a picture of it. There we go. You can see some of the drugstores there as you go down where the milk store is now.
Yep. That's the milk store, right? Was that where the dentist studio? That was a laundromat called the Maris Laundromat.
Oh, okay. All right. Maybe that person's watching. They're writing it down right now.
Then
Good.
I want to go a little farther up Bay Street, where they used to have, on Richard Street, they used to have the Powers horse stables. Do you remember them?
Oh, yeah. I don't have a picture in this program, but I do have a picture of it. Right. A little bit further up Bay Street.
Okay,
right.
Okay. Because I lived on Richard Street for a long time.
Okay. Yeah, they, that whole area, and I do have some pictures of it, not when it was up, but after the fire.
After the fire?
Yeah, that's the only pictures I have of that.
Then they had up on Washington Street at the end, Bay in Washington, they had two stores there. It was Flo's Market and Jerry Sears Market.
Oh, yeah, okay.
You remember them?
Oh, way up near Gilmet Square, you mean?
Yep, Gilmet Square. It was right there. On the corner of Whately Street was a little store called Flo's Market, ran by the Corsies. Then right before it, on the other side, was Jerry Sears Market.
Oh, boy. That
was in the 60s.
Oh, in the 60s. Oh, geez, I'll have to try to see if we can find a photograph of that.
Yep,
Show that.
Yep.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Oh, that's good. There's some, you always learn something new every day. And hopefully next time I'll be able to find pictures of that and explain that story. We get another call. You're next in Old Time Taunton.
Hi, Charlie.
Hi.
Across the street from Goldstein's, there was an ice cream parlor there, Noel's.
Oh, okay.
You don't have no pictures of that?
No.
I think it was, later years, it was run by the Lewis family.
Okay.
And then they opened up a restaurant up on Winthrop Street.
Okay.
So I thought maybe you have a picture of that.
I don't have that, like Styles Fish Market. I don't have a picture of that ice cream shop that you just talked about, or those two stores that they talked about.
Yeah.
So if you know of anybody that, maybe somebody who's watching says, oh, I've got a picture of that, maybe they'll make it available.
Sure.
Great.
Okay.
Hey, thank you.
Good show.
Yeah, bye-bye. There's so many interesting parts of the city. I try to do this program. We've been doing it since 1998. It's all volunteer. As I go around, and if you have an organization that was looking to have a presentation done, a PowerPoint presentation, I'm more than happy to do that if my schedule allows it. I volunteer to do it, so hopefully you'll be available. I can take this quick call. Oops. You're next in Old Time Taunton. Hi. Person's unavailable, but we run out of time. I want to appreciate you for watching tonight, and join us next week for another edition of Old Time Taunton. Thank you, and good night.